Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Coffee with Craner. I'm here today for episode 118 with Rob Renaud, the president and founding partner of ENCOR Advisors, a leading commercial real estate firm in Canada based in the GTA. And if you don't know, Rob is actually from the Amherstburg area. He grew up here and later went to school to Queen's University, where he received a Bachelor of Commerce, specializing in finance, marketing, and entrepreneurial studies. He's also an advisory board member at TerraTech, certified commercial investment member, and certified high performance CRE coach, and many other accolades and accomplishments under his belt. So I'm really excited to talk about the commercial real estate business and tenant representation. It's not something I've talked about on the show yet, and it's going to be great to hear Rob's take on everything. So, Rob, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Lyndon, for having me.
Now, Rob, I don't know if you've caught previous episodes, but every episode I have to ask a question relating to coffee. It's on theme. Where in the GTA would you say is your favorite place for coffee?
Well, the GTA is a pretty big place, and there's some beautiful spots. But as somebody who grew up in a town where there's a lot of history, Amherstburg, and a lot of beautiful architecture, and went to Queen's University, where there's lots of limestone buildings and history. That's where the original Parliament of Canada was located. I've come to appreciate heritage and architecture, and some of my favorite places in the world involve that. So, Art Deco cities like Chicago and New York, and Toronto has that as well. And so one of my favorite coffee shops in the spirit of architecture is Tenant Coffee, which is located in a heritage building on the corner of Yonge Street and Temperance Street, downtown Toronto. And as you know, Yonge Street is an area that's in constant change. But this is like a diamond in the rough. This place has high ceilings, probably 20-foot high ceilings. It has an arcade style architecture. It's got a banquette seating, like polished cherry colored leather and brass, beautiful, massive espresso machine. So, when I go in there, I feel alive, and there's not really a lot of room to sit. But when you're in there getting your coffee, standing room only. And it's just a phenomenal place. Not only is the coffee great, but the atmosphere is phenomenal.
Yeah, it sounds like a space definitely where you're inspired, feel creative, and like you said, it brings you back memories from Amherstburg, which is
well, thank God I didn't say Tim Hortons. Oh, sorry. I guess some people might say Timmy's.
Well, we know that's your second option. I really appreciate you being here. And like I mentioned, I haven't talked about corporate real estate, commercial real estate, and I'm interested in to know, how did this journey start for you to become a consultant and become president of ENCOR Advisors, which is a massive global company?
Well, thanks a lot, Lyndon. I guess like everything in life, preparation is key. And I didn't realize until later on, when I was sitting in the passenger seat of my father's car, driving around, putting up signs in the front lawns and joining him at listing presentations as a prominent local realtor. My father, Rob Renaud, was very active in waterfront properties and even some commercial real estate in the Windsor and Essex County area for probably 35 years. And, I would see firsthand what it's like to be in the real estate business. I didn't want to be a residential real estate agent, because you work a lot of evenings and weekends, as you probably know, based on the kind of business that you do in the mortgage game. So I ventured out to go into the marketing world, and I worked in 1995 at Kraft Foods, and I was a summer intern, and I loved it. It was an amazing experience, and I felt like it's something I wanted to be part of. And it was interesting is that, I didn't plan to get into the commercial real estate industry. I didn't know anything about it. Back then, information wasn't as available as it is today. Today, if you Google commercial real estate brokerage or consulting, you'd have thousands of pages of information. But back then, it was a pretty nascent industry. So, I worked at Kraft for the summer. I went to go and interview to get a job. We were just coming out of a recession in 1996. and it was a very competitive job market. And unfortunately, I didn't get the job to come back full time, which is an anomaly. Not because it was me, but they didn't hire anybody back. That's from that summer prior to us graduating from Queens, and it was almost like there was someone looking over my shoulder, because when I drove back to Kingston from my interview at Kraft that afternoon, there was a letter on my desk from Devencor at the time. The name of the company that I joined in 1996 was Devencor, and I'd never considered a career in commercial real estate, any sort of sales or consulting. And I always thought I wanted to be in marketing. But I had a good friend who was sort of very prominent in sales at Procter and Gamble, and I also met the CEO of SC Johnson Wax, and he had suggested that I would be a great relationship-driven professional in the sales game. And so I gave it a shot. I talked to Devencor, went down, took a train, and this was probably April of 1996. And they made me an offer right on the spot, and I was quite comfortable with it because I understood what was involved with relationship building. I understood what was involved with bringing parties together and transacting on very high value services and issues. And so that was the start of my career in 1996. I had a mentor at the time for a couple of years, and it was a great experience. Really what I decided to do was something that I'd learned through going to a Anthony Robbins seminar in the early 90s with my dad. And there's a guy, this guy Anthony Robbins had said, one of his expressions is, what you focus on grows. And so just like you, what I did at that time in my career was I worked long and hard. I focused on my career. I did some late hours. I was creative. I was tenacious, trying to be a little bit different than everybody else. And so over the course of many, many years, I sort of developed a bit of a different practice. I spent a couple of years in England. I spent a few years building up a global corporate accounts division within Devencor. I was asked to go start up an office in Toronto West to launch our industrial practice, which I did, and I became the broker record of that division. I became a shareholder of the company locally. That grew to a national shareholding interest. I was involved in mergers and acquisitions discussions, which never came together. But all this to sort of say that was all preparation. And what I focused on during all those years, and looking back to my own father's experience of launching his own practice, was all preparation for what was to come, which is in April of 2020, the former majority shareholder of our company decided he wanted to sell the business through a management buyout in Ontario. And that's what we did. We organized for a group of partners to come together, and we bought the business in Ontario. And within about a year after that, we decided to rebrand it to ENCOR Advisors. So it was our chance to sort of have another chance to demonstrate to the market that we were, a group of professionals that was focused on quality. And I led the acquisition. I was the broker of records. It was a natural thing for me to step into the role of president. And that's how it all came to be, was through that journey. These things don't happen overnight. It takes a lot of hard work. And I think, if anything, the thing that I've done to get into this place is I've been a very diligent and consistent professional during my career.
And just to go back on what you mentioned, you were working at Kraft.
Yes.
And as a young student that was just graduated, and you were working there, how did Devencor find you and give you that letter? What made you stand out? How did that connection take place?
Well, back then we didn't have really much internet, and so they used to send out resume books from universities, from Queen's School of Business, where I went to school, Western, and a few others. And there's a highlighter around my name and a few other people that they wanted to interview. And so that's how they got a hold of me, was through this resume book. If it wasn't for that, then I don't know that I would ever be in this industry.
So it was before LinkedIn was a thing.
Yeah. Totally.
Resume books, and you would just they'd be sent out to corporate offices, and you'd hope that you'd be highlighted and get a call.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. It was a great way that we actually hired a lot of people at our firm back then through that same mechanism. And I was the very first young professional they hired. I was the first mentee they hired through that process. We created a whole program around that. Over the years that followed, sending out letters through curated sort of efforts to pick top performers that were competitive. They might have been athletic or great sort of demonstrable experience in leadership and all that. And I was very involved at Queen, so I think that stood out. And grades is one thing, but being able to demonstrate that you're active and you want to be part of the community really helps give one a leg up to get a job in this industry. So that's what I did.
100%. And I mentioned it briefly about a little bit about what ENCOR Advisors does, but for those that don't know, would you be able to simplify it and just explain, your role?
Sure. So, I guess the analogy we'll often use, and I'll say this because not everybody has experience of buying or purchasing commercial real estate. But imagine that you are going to go buy your house, and you walk by a open house one day, and you see a sign. You walk in and you shake the hand of the listing agent, and the listing agent welcomes you with open arms and shows you around, and then you ask the listing agent, "Geez, this is beautiful, a beautiful home. What are you asking?" And then you have a nice conversation, and all of a sudden the agent says, "Well, are you interested in making an offer?" And you say, "Sure. Well, can I help you with that? Do you have an agent?" "Well, no, we don't have an agent." So imagine that you walked inside that open house with your own agent who is working for you, a buyer broker or a buyer representative. Since 1972, our group has focused exclusively on working for tenants and buyers as opposed to sellers, landlords, and investors. And the benefit of that is that, when you have your own representative, they're working for you, they're advocating for your best interests, they're focused 100% on what you're looking to achieve. And that's more like a consulting role. And yes, it does avoid conflicts of interest, but beyond that, it's more about holding a client's hand to support them through the entire decision-making process and negotiating the right outcome. So we have a whole, team of people, a force that focuses just on that, which is quite unique.
And what is the day in the life of Rob Renaud look like?
Jeez, that's it changes day by day, but for me, where I shine is in complexity. I shine in helping clients navigate strategy, thinking about, if I have a couple of large industrial buildings and I want to sort of figure out, how to put them together, where to locate them, what they should look like, how they should be designed, what kind of, landlords we want to do business with, how long of a lease term we want to execute, what sort of costs we're prepared to pay, how is it going to impact our HR, all those things are on my mind. And so I assembled a team of consultants that optimizes that decision making. That's where I shine. That's, let's say if I was to put myself in a position where I could do that every single day, that would be my unique ability is to take those complicated processes and then simplify them through a process that allows the client to focus on their core business and allow me to be their guide, almost like having your own real estate department. Now, beyond that, there's a lot of mechanics, right, to go into the day-to-day. So there's drafting of offers to lease and purchase or sale on behalf of clients. There's running financial analyses, demographic studies. There's a lot of analysis that gets done and a lot of negotiation of documentation. And so, while day-to-day, that may be the mechanics that happens, the back office or the behind the curtain sort of thing that happens. Front stage, where I shine is being the one who takes all that and then helps shape the strategy and the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And from what I'm hearing, trust is a big component of this, especially with your clients. And this leads me to my next question, because it relates to what you're doing, but also those that are watching. One of the most important aspects of building your business is building those client relationships. How do you build those with the tenants and buyers that you're representing? That perhaps maybe there's a few things that some people that are in many different industries can learn from how to build strong client relationships.
Well, I mean, the easy thing is to actually know who your client is and get to know them, and ensure that the client looks at you as somebody who's got their back. And the way that I like to do that is to be part of their community. So it's not just about a transaction. It's never about a transaction. For me, it's about a relationship. It's about building on that relationship. More often than not, my clients come, and it may sound cheesy, but they do come through referral. And it's not sort of like one of those things where I send a letter and say, send me some referrals. That's not what this is about. It's about a network of people that believe in each other. And so oftentimes where you'll find me shine is where I'm working within an industry. It could be in the entertainment industry, or it could be, the supply chain world, where I'm working for a client who I've had great success with, and they want to share that with others within their community. And that makes the whole community very sticky. I remember when I worked at the Town Shop Menswear in Amherstburg in the late 80s and early 90s. And I remember walking downtown Amherstburg, and I was waving constantly as I was walking down Richmond Street or Sandwich Street or Dalhousie Street, because I knew everybody, And so when you know everybody, it makes it easier for people to do business with you or to work with you or to like you, especially if you're a good person, you do great things. So what I try to do is sow those same seeds here in Toronto, which is a big, big place, and create these micro communities of people that want to help each other out. And my experiences, generally speaking, I try to give first. I always try and help people, and that has come back in spades.
And now for someone that's perhaps hasn't, like you said, you're walking down the streets of Richmond, and you're waving at people but for that young entrepreneur that's looking, let's say they're in real estate, right? And they're prospecting leads or clients, and now they're wanting to set that initial meeting up with a buyer or a seller or really anybody. What would be your advice for that very first meeting? These two individuals do not know each other. How should that conversation start?
I think that beyond trust, that one of the most important things, a couple of the most important things that the reason why people buy is because they feel comfortable. As well, they feel like you're going to go to the wall for them. That you care about the outcome. You're not just in it for what often happens in our industry. And it's not to say there's not a lot of great professionals. I have a lot of respect for a lot of amazing people in my profession, but there are, the sales or commission-driven industry can have the perspective of being commission-oriented, and it's transaction-oriented. So if you can show that you care more about the outcome, and you're going to work harder to achieve that successful outcome for the prospective client, and you would like the chance to just get together and demonstrate that you have that desire, it does go a long way. I remember back when I started in the mid 90s, I just asked for a little bit of time to give them a couple of ideas, and if ultimately at the end of the day, all that happened was they learned a few things. To me, that was better than actually not asking for the meeting. And I think it also helps, Lyndon, when you have a mentor. So, I had a mentor early on in my career. I learned some good things from that person, and I kind of shaped my own career in a different way after those couple of years. But what I would say is that having somebody who can join you and support you is also super important in helping to get in the door, because you can't say you have a track record when you're very young in any industry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, very, very true. I appreciate that. Going on to my next question, more about you, Rob, as president of ENCOR Advisors. What is your vision for the future of this company? Like you said, it's fairly, I guess it has a rich history, but ENCOR Advisors is fairly new. 2020, you mentioned, is the acquisition. What's your vision?
I believe that our industry is slowly being disrupted by technology. And I don't mean that would suggest in any way that we're going to not have jobs, right? What I mean is that certain tasks and certain business processes are being disrupted, not the people. And yes, there will be some people whose jobs will become redundant, like any other industry, especially if it's highly repetitive tasks. But I think that if I was to look to the future, we haven't fully launched our strat plan yet, but a couple of the ideals that we strive towards are, uncommon, exceptional experiences. And so, to me, my vision would be to leverage exceptional process, and that may be backed up by technology, leverage exceptional experience, and hire amazing people that care about their clients and go the extra mile to achieve those great outcomes for them. And if we can do that consistently as a team, we're going to be winning, more than our fair share of business.
Yeah, it will only lead to growth, right? It's
100%. Yeah.
Now, my final question for you, Rob, is for somebody that wants to be in your shoes, and I'm not saying go get a job at Kraft Foods, and times have changed, obviously. But for somebody that says, let's say somebody walked through the door and said, Rob, I want to be in your shoes. How do I get there? What would be your advice to that individual?
I would say at this stage, it's a matter of hard work and focus, and just keeping your eye on the prize. Just deciding what it is that you want, writing down your goals. Forcing yourself to be accountable, being consistent, not taking anything for granted, not resting on your laurels. Those are all very important things. To get to the point where someone is successful and they can achieve great results in their career, and like I've been involved in real estate property files that are in the multi-hundred millions, right, in value. So it's high stakes. And every so often, if we have like a huge win, and I can mention many of them over my career, where we've done large build-to-suits, or sold big properties, or sale leaseback, large leases for brand new buildings that don't exist. Like, there's a lot of things there. I don't sort of come away from those projects saying, "Geez, I've done it. I'm done. Like I've achieved my successes. I'm going to go and take my foot off the gas." I always sort of, in order to sort of continue to grow in your career, you have to remain focused on what's next. They often say you're only as good as your last deal. And I'm not so sure that's the case. What I would say to you is that, the people that are often on a roller coaster in business and life, they're temperamental. They'll have a great success, and then they'll kind of become complacent and not sort of focused on what's next. So I think it's very important to be intentional, purposeful with your time, to set objectives, and to always be striving for that next success, and to be a constant learner. Like, I'm still learning. Like, this morning I was online looking at how to implement ChatGPT in our business, which is to free up my time to be more productive. It's everything that you would expect in any profession. And it's not like this is new, what I'm telling you, but I think those are the key pillars in our industry if you want to become a leader and be very successful in the long run.
Being able to adapt, like you mentioned, right? There's so many efficiencies that are taking place, and technology, like you mentioned, is disrupting a number of industries, and you have to be on top of it. So I completely agree with you. And I thought this was a fantastic interview, and I hope everyone that was watching really enjoyed it, and perhaps becomes interested in some type of career in commercial real estate. And Rob's a great person to follow on LinkedIn and really learn from. He's an expert in the business, and I'm so proud that you're from the Amherstburg area, and your father Ron has definitely created a legacy here as well. So we're just pleased to have you on the show, and I can't thank you enough for your time.
Well, thank you, Lyndon. I'm very impressed with everything you're doing with your own career. You're doing everything right from where I can, sit and watch how you promote yourself and how active you are, and I'm super impressed. And wish you all the very best with your career as you continue to grow yourself. And I really appreciate you having me on this show today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate those words. This is episode 118. If you missed it, visit coffeewithcrainer.com where you can rewatch the full episode and more.